statue of Krishna up here if you haven't noticed. And Krishna is often depicted playing the flute, which represents, on a deeper level, the sounds of our inner anatomy, the chakras, which we'll talk a little bit about tonight. So we're going to share just a little bit on what is Sanatana Dharma, a little bit of the allegory in the Bhagavad Gita. We'll watch a video of Swamiji sharing. It's about an 8.5-minute video on the 4 aspects of consciousness. And then we'll have time for questions, sharing, and more time to meditate. So anyway, this has been a new journey for us, and it's just, when you tap into the Gita, there's just this, as the saying goes, it's the song of spirit, so we tap into that eternal reservoir. And that's the first thing that we wanted to share tonight, is Swami, in this book, if you don't have it already, highly recommended, The Essence of the Bhagavad Gita. He's introducing the Gita. Now the Gita, we shared some of this last week, but as they say, repetition is the mother of all learning. Yogananda said, Paramahansa Yogananda said that the essence of the Upanishads, or the Vedas, the essence of the Vedas is in the Upanishads, he said. And the essence of the Upanishads is in the Mahabharata, which is the great Indian epic. And the quintessence of the Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita, which is just a small excerpt of when Krishna, who represents the Guru, or our God incarnate, is a chariot and counseling Arjuna, who represents the devotee, who represents us. Devotee everyman is how Swamiji shares it. And this version is sort of the essence of the essence. This is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, which Swami Kriyananda wrote in a real period of, in a way, it was Swamiji's magnum opus, because he tapped into that superconscious state where we can really receive divine wisdom and insight. It was a culmination, really, of a life of discipleship, that he wrote this book in 6 weeks. This is a 600-page, commentary on perhaps the deepest scripture known to man, and it just literally, like the song of spirit, it flowed through him. And when you read it, there are other versions of the Gita out there, but there's something about this one that really does sing. And so we'll share a little bit of that this evening. But one of the ways Swamiji picks it up is by, what is Sanatana Dharma? And this in India is known as the eternal way, or the eternal truth, or the eternal religion. But really, religion isn't the best word, because the Gita is more concerned with practice than with belief. So it's really the eternal way. And that way is that you are a soul, and you have come down from spirit, and we're all traversing our journey back home to self-realization. The light of self-realization and finding God are synonymous. And that light and that journey, one of the ways that we uncover and realize that we're moving in the right direction is feeling this touch of spirit that's within us. And one of the ways that Yogananda described spirit is Satchidananda. This is the eternal, the way of the end goal. So he described it as ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. And I'll just share just a brief excerpt from this chapter on Sanatana Dharma. Jesus Christ said, "Yet for all truth seekers, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Perfection is the goal of every true religion. Perfection is a state of existence, not of mere belief. The Bhagavad Gita, from this point of view, is a revealed scripture, but it emphasizes the need for inner revelations, without which no words can suffice to explain wisdom. And then just a further part of this chapter. One extraordinary aspect of the Gita is its universality. Whatever the needs of any particular time or people, this greatest scripture addresses them all from the highest point of view. In Hinduism as a whole, indeed, no aspect of the truth is rejected. The Hindu teachings emphasize the universal way of living for high spiritual attainment. The Hindu teachings concern themselves much less with beliefs than with practices. They portray the struggles common to each ego on its long upward journey from ignorance to self-realization. Thus, the teaching of the Gita is not specifically Hindu. It is all-embracing. Not only is it completely non-sectarian, but it shows people how even their worldly experiences can help them in the end, spiritually, perhaps after many lifetimes, by weaving the threads of diverse human experience into the vast tapestry that comprises the story of each soul's journey to ultimate perfection in God. For this journey contains innumerable twists and turns. There is but one guideline that can give it right direction, the pole star of one's own innate divinity. The Bhagavad Gita points in this universally true direction. This is the stage that Swamiji is helping set for us. This is even before we get into the actual slokas in the Gita itself. So to truly understand the Gita is to embrace it in that universal way that it embraces us. And that leads to our second topic. Dion, would you help us pull up that picture?
Yeah.
Which is the allegory of the Gita. And Dharma Devi shared a little bit last week on the chakras. So in the Gita as well, would you like to share this? There are the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and they're actually cousins. And there's a lot of backstory in the Mahabharata. The Pandavas are the forces of light. And there are 5 brothers.
And go to the bottom of
Yeah, would you go to the bottom? Sahadeva and Nakula, and they represent the first chakra and the second chakra. And they're actually twins, which is interesting. And the first and second chakra also correspond to the yamas and the niyamas, which are sort of like the do's and don'ts on the spiritual path, sort of like the spiritual 10 commandments, if you will. So that's an interesting aspect. And then Arjuna, who is the warrior, represents the lumbar chakra, which is the center of fiery self-control. And Bhima is at the heart chakra. And Bhima is, in the story, is the brother with tremendous power and vitality. And this corresponds to the power of pranayama. The heart chakra is also the chakra of air. That's the element, and of divine love. But Bhima can be very volatile. He can be, if he's not in control, he can fly off the cuff. So Yudhishthira is the eldest Pandava brother, and he represents the throat chakra. Now there's an interesting story, which Swamiji will actually highlight, I think, in the video briefly, so you might miss it. And that story is of Shakuni. Shakuni was the evil uncle. He was a trick gambler. So he had the dice loaded, and he tricked. Yudhishthira had this one thing that he liked to gamble. So he tricked Yudhishthira into this dice game where the dice were loaded. And Yudhishthira began to roll the dice, and Shakuni said, "Lo, I have won." And so he won a little bit of land, and then he enticed him to gamble again. And then Yudhishthira got so far down this track that he then wagered his brothers, and he lost his brothers. And then, brother, I'm sorry, can you scroll us to the bottom? So then he actually gambled away his wife, Draupadi. Now Draupadi represents, see at the bottom, Kundalini, the sleeping serpent. And it's interesting because Draupadi in the Mahabharata is married to all 5 of the Pandava brothers. Now, again, this is the allegory in the scripture. It's that the energy, the sleeping serpent energy, is united with all of the chakras, and it has to be, this is the Kundalini awakening that happens through not just techniques alone. You know, this is one thing, as in Los Angeles and places where we get a little too technique oriented. It's techniques plus devotion, and that's what the Gita, it's the art and science of Raja Yoga, meaning the royal yoga, meaning that you are an heir to a divine kingdom, and that this is when the soul rules the kingdom. Then everything, you can enjoy this world with God's joy in an uplifted way. But when we don't, when we feel out of tune, that's when the Kauravas have taken over. And so we're all fighting this upward ascent between our subconscious downward pulling tendencies, which are represented by the Kauravas, and our upward spiritual qualities, which are represented by the Pandavas, the forces of light. So, with that said, let's watch the video of Swamiji, and he's going to talk about the 4 aspects of mind. And then we'll have time for questions and comments. Dharma Devi, is there anything you want to share before we get into the video?
Well, just a little bit more. I mean, like Krishna is the
Yeah, don't forget Krishna.
Christ center, representing the Guru. Now, Draupadi is a great devotee of Krishna in the Mahabharata. And so Narayana explained how she comes to marry the 5 Pandava brothers, which is a great story in itself. She is going to be betrothed to a husband that she does not want. And the tradition with the Indian custom of betrothal actually didn't start as like, I'm giving you my daughter so you give me land. I mean, that is like kind of what it became at its very lowest point. But before, it was the to-be wife she could set up a contest to see who the greatest warrior or whatever the test was that she was looking for. And it was like the Swayamvara. And so it was, in Draupadi's case, she called this Swayamvara because she had that was her birthright. So they said her father was like, we're going to do this political game, we're going to marry you off to this guy. And she's like, no. I call the Swayamvara. Like, go girl. And so that's her right. She gets to, and she gets to name the test. So her test is, the winner is the greatest warrior in all the land, because her father is Drupada, or Drupada. Drupada was humiliated, and it's a whole huge story, but actually humiliated by his old friend Dronacharya. So this ties in really deeply because Dronacharya is the teacher of the martial arts to all of the Pandava brothers and all of the Kauravas. So Drona, arch enemy of Drupada, father of Draupadi. It's not going to be a pop quiz, but it's good to know because Draupadi sets up the Swayambara and she puts out the word to all of the princes. She's a princess, so it's only supposed to be princes that are able to go for her hand in marriage. And at this point, the Pandava brothers are in exile. They are not to be seen by anyone. They come out of their exile and to go to the Swayambara of Draupadi. And Arjuna, being the greatest warrior, as we talked about, the lumbar center, fiery self-control, the deepest concentration, which gets us up to the point between the eyebrows, he wins the contest. It's an awesome contest.
And he is
We can
an
go into it another.
archer, right?
Yeah.
And the arrows on the metaphysical sense represent the arrows of concentration that we're shooting up to the point
Yeah.
between
What's the
eyebrows.
contest?
Okay, so the contest, thank you for asking. The contest is that her husband has to shoot an arrow while looking in a pool of water it's 5 arrows, I believe.
Yeah, it's 5 arrows.
5 arrows through a single shot into a twirling wooden fish up about like 100
It
yards
has
or
to go
something.
through a hole and strike the fish. And
All 5.
And you can only look at the
Right, and
reflection
it's
from the water.
spinning.
Whoa.
And so it's kind of like an impossible thing. She thinks nobody will be able to do it. There are actually 2 warriors who can do it. Arjuna, and we'll get into the other one later. But the other one doesn't get to,
But get
To
back
try
to
out.
so he wins. So
So
Arjuna wins.
Arjuna wins, and she's thrilled. Wow, this is a husband that is worthy of my awesomeness. And so Arjuna takes her home to his mother's house, and he's just coming in the door, and imagine Kunti, his mother, is washing the dishes or something, and he says, "Mother, look what I won in the contest." And before she looks, she says, "Well, Arjuna, just make sure you share the prize with your 4 brothers." And in that time, the spoken word was much more powerful. If you hear someone say, "My word is my bond," that was literal then. The word is bond. And for a mother of such a high spiritual stature to say that, it had to be done, or she would be disgraced, whatever, all this stuff. But her word was bond. So he had to share his prize with his other 4 brothers. And so Draupadi was distraught. She was like, "This is not done. I will not marry 5 men. It's crazy." But she is such a devoted disciple of Krishna, who's the guru of actually pretty much everybody in the story. He's kind of recognized as God incarnate. And he convinces Draupadi that it's the right thing to do. Not just because Kunti said so, but because it was the right thing to do. And what's interesting about that is Krishna, being the point between the eyebrows, is coaxing the Kundalini through the chakras. So he's the magnetic pull that's saying, no, it's okay. You're marrying the 5
There's
energy centers to come to me.
There's an interesting, that word coax, it's like loving persuasion. And Yogananda has a chant in the Temple of Silence, in the Temple of Peace. We will chant at the end before we meditate. I will meet thee, I will touch thee, I will love thee, and coax thee to my altar of peace. It's like that loving persuasion of raising. So that's this is the way that real Kundalini awakening happens, with technique married with loving persuasion. So this is the allegory in the Gita. There's much more, but this is the heart of the allegory that these 5 Pandu brothers we want to get to know, because these are our chakras. And as we watch the video with Swamiji in a moment, that dice game I was mentioning with Shakuni. So when Yudhishthira loses his brothers and he loses Draupadi, right? He loses everything, and it's representing when you play with delusion, then you lose the inner kingdom. So it's, as Yogananda said, desires ever gratified, never satisfied. That, as long as you play with it, there's no end to it. So, but when you go inside, Satchidananda, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. So all of your desires will be fulfilled in a spiritual sense if you go inward to God first. So shall we watch the video?
Sure. But,
Sorry.
well, just along those lines, when he's in this dice game, he gambles away his land, his brothers, and then he gambles away himself. And then
Oh, that's right.
he tries to gamble away Draupadi. And of course, Shakuni is like, awesome, yeah, give it all to me. But then Draupadi is a really smart one, because she says, wait a minute, you're telling me he gambled away himself, and then you're saying he can then gamble away me? No, he already lost himself. I'm then a free woman. And so, anyways, through this whole thing, she ends up unwinding his whole total screw up and gets everything back, because she gets to the heart of it.
The one other interesting thing before we do the video is their exile, is 12 years that they go into the forest, and then they have 1 year in hiding before they come out. And it represents puberty. It represents when the spiritual tendencies go dormant. And then it's also connected to these 12-year Jupiter cycles. And that a lot of people come on the path at 24, 36, 48, or whatever it may be. But so the spiritual warriors then are coming back to the forefront. So anyway, let's watch Swami. Yeah.
Well, you sorry,
Oh my God.
it's like it gets to it. But the 12-year cycle, and then 1 year of hiding before coming back into rulership of the kingdom.
Yeah.
So in that 1 year of hiding, if they are caught, if they're recognized, they go back into 12 more years of exile, which is really important, because it's like,
You have
It's-
an inflection point.
yeah, there's this little period where, something has to be awakened, and then if it's not, it can just cycle back around again, and we just get wrapped back up into the world and into delusion, back into exile for 12 more years, and then, hey, can we come back now? So it's a very deep, awesome allegory.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om, I bow to the Lord Vasudeva. This is the second brief introduction to a series of classes, I might call them, or commentaries, sessions in which I'm going to be discussing Paramhansa Yogananda's commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. I wrote a book on his commentaries called The Essence of the Bhagavad Gita. These commentaries will be based on those. The Bhagavad Gita, as I said last time, is one of the great scriptures of the world. In many ways, it's the greatest because it's the most condensed and amazingly clear description of man's ascent from matter to the heavens and to union with God. But in fact, the whole Mahabharata, of which the Bhagavad Gita is taken, describes the descent also, how man is allegorical, but how man came from spirit, how man was manifested through vibration in material form, and how he gambled. Shakuni, who in the story of the Mahabharata was a trick gambler, and Yudhishthira gambled away everything by this trickery. And so we gamble away our happiness and our peace of mind and everything, playing with the desires of this world. It's a gamble that we can never lose. Many people think, oh, well, I won't be hurt by this, I won't be hurt by that. Don't play that game, it's not safe. The thing is, the dice are loaded. You can't trust your own mind. You can't get out of delusion just by thinking your way out of it. And so the Bhagavad Gita tells you different cues. It's full of secrets for how to get out of delusion and to discover your own highest reality. Now, the greatest tool of all, the greatest influence of all, is the Guru. And the Bhagavad Gita has this conversation, this dialogue between Krishna, who represents God, who in turn represents, or I should say the Guru represents God, and Krishna represents the Guru and God. And Arjuna represents the devotee. In history, Arjuna was a great master himself. But it's interesting how in this story, he presents himself to Krishna just as the humble devotee in need of instruction. And it's a wonderful dialogue. But why do we need a guru is one of the first questions everybody asks. I read an article in the Times of India a few years ago, which said that in this day of widespread literacy, people don't need gurus. They can always go to a bookstore and buy a book on the subject, or go to a library and take a book out. They don't understand that a guru is not somebody who is merely there to give you intellectual teaching. He's not there to answer intellectual questions. In fact, you'll never understand reality by the intellect alone. And this is why the sage Patanjali defines yoga, or union with God, as yogas chitta vritti nirodha, which is to say yoga, or union with God, is the neutralization of the little eddies or whirlpools of ego, of feeling, I should say. Vritti, chitta is the word for feeling. There are four aspects of mind. Sri Yukteswar explained them this way, that you've got a horse reflected in a mirror. The mirror is the mind. This is why in the Mahabharata, and you find it described here in the very first stanza of the Bhagavad Gita, blind Dhritarashtra. The mind is blind because it doesn't decide, it merely receives impressions from outside. This is the aspect of the mind that is sort of the blank slate on which everything is written. Then comes the intellect. Mon, buddhi, ahankar, chitta. Mon is the mind. Buddhi is the intellect. And the intellect looks at this image of a horse in the mirror and says, oh, that's a horse. Well, you're not bound by that definition. The ego then comes in and says, oh, that's my horse. And still you're not really bound, because you can see a thing as yours and know that you have responsibility to it, but you may not be attached to it. Attachment comes in when feeling comes in. Feeling is of the heart. And when feeling says, oh, how happy I am to see my horse, then you're caught in delusion. The horse was non-existent. The definition was non-existent. The egoic attachment was non-existent. Everything is a dream of God. Nothing is real. But when you become attached to the dream, that's when the dream can hold you. And how long will it hold you? Just as long as you like. Because there are infinite number of byways in which you think, oh, I'll find this fulfillment here and that fulfillment there. You'll never find fulfillment except in the self. One time Yogananda, when he wanted to start his school in Ranchi, he went to the Maharaja of Kashim Bazar and asked him if he would give him land to have it on, to found it on. And the Maharaja wanted to test his knowledge. So he had a group of pundits come in. Well, Yogananda was a young man and was not a scholar. And he said that there they were, all ranged against me, ready for a spiritual bullfight. And Yogananda said, let's not talk about anything that we've learned in the scriptures. Let's talk about what we have realized. And of course that took all the wind out of their sails, because that's all the understanding they had was intellectual knowledge. He said the scriptures say that these four aspects of mind, Mon, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta, they have their corresponding location in the body. Can you tell me what they are, what those locations are? And they of course were stumped. He said, well, Mon, the mind, is centered here at the top of the head. Buddhi is centered between the eyebrows, and that's why when you try to think deeply or reason, you tend to knit your eyebrows. Ego is centered here in the medulla oblongata, and that's why when people are egotistical, they sort of look down their noses, because tension draws their energy back here. You look down your nose, or see everybody is beneath your nose, as they say in Italian, sotto il naso. And then when you feel love, you feel it in the heart. Feelings are centered in the heart. You'll never find a love-sick swain saying, oh, my knee is broken, when he's disappointed in love. But they all will say, I have a broken heart, or I feel very badly in my heart. The heart is the center of feeling. Now, without feeling, you don't have anything. Everything in modern civilization emphasizes intellect. You don't understand things until you've understood them by your own experience, which begins in the heart. So the Bhagavad Gita, above all, stresses the heart. And I want to talk next time, again, about the importance of the Guru in helping to change your level of consciousness from Chitta to infinite consciousness, Satchidananda. God bless you.
I have a question. As Swamiji was saying that when we come to the heart, that's where our attachment happens, and that's when we
Yes.
fall in delusion. After
Yes.
we go to those three different states there. But then he's also saying that it's the heart, and so we experience it in our heart, that we're not really knowing what the experience is. And
Right.
So there's good attachments and not so good attachments. Is that the idea, how to
Yeah.
discern the two? And,
Go ahead.
So there's feeling, and what he's saying is you can't get anywhere without the heart's feeling being deeply involved. Like you have direct experience in the heart through feeling. And chitta is like agitated feeling. So just like Narayan was talking about Bhima, who represents the heart chakra, he's like the strongest, most courageous. Draupadi always goes to him because she knows he'll get it done. She says, I need help, you have to protect me. And he's like, where is the, I'll go get him and kill him, and you know. And she's like, awesome. Good husband. But he can get overly emotional and he loses control. And then he's like, oh my God, what am I doing? Suddenly I'm like almost killing my brothers and my mother. He loses himself. So it's when we lose ourselves in feeling and in disturbed feeling. It's like the energy of the heart, rather than taking that experience, that beautiful sunset or that beautiful horse that we love, and going, this is God's dream. I love this horse, and it's God's, and I'm God's, and it's all God's anyways. Inward and upward in devotion, it's the heart going, oh, it's my horse. I love my horse. What if something happens to my horse? Oh no, then I'll be like depressed for who knows how long, and my whole life will be ruined, and what if this happens? And so it's the disturbed feeling that is the negative, what gets us caught in delusion.
And that's why Swamiji was highlighting Patanjali's second Yoga Sutra, Yogas Chitta, Vritti Nirodha. Yoga, union with God, is the neutralization or the calming, better understood, the calming of the chitta. And when the chitta, when your heart is calm, you don't become indifferent. And it's like there was that, did you hear that joke of the Buddhist master? He gave a child, he said, I give you emptiness wrapped in nothingness. And he said, and the child said, well, thank you for this thoughtless and meaningless gift. And the Buddhist master said, you're welcome. It's just like, it's not that our spiritual life becomes meaningless and become apathetic, but you can actually feel on a deeper level when the heart's feelings are calmed down. And that's why Sri Yukteswar talked that the prime requisite on the spiritual path is the cultivating the awakening of the heart's natural love. Here was the Gyan Avatar, right? The avatar of wisdom, who wrote about the yuga cycles and all this incredible, you read the Holy Science and you're just like, whoa, And he's, at the end of that book, he said, I hope I've proved that God is love and that you must awaken the heart's natural love. So it's essential for us to feel in our heart, but that's also where we, like you're sharing, Jen, that's where we can get caught. So it's shifting, and we're on a really good point there too. It's shifting our attachment from this world to attachment to Divine Mother. And it's not, that's why yoga is so incredibly helpful. It's not beliefs, it's not dogma, it's practices. It's how do you redirect your life force. That's why we have altars. That's why we have, inspirational things, so that we're people. We relate to other people. So we relate to Krishna. We relate to Lady Guadalupe. We relate to God in all these different ways, and we want to cultivate an attachment to those positive things till ultimately we transcend it all.
And the key word with the second Yoga Sutra is the vritti. So it's the vortices of feeling. So think of like a calm ocean. There's no waves, and then and think of that as calm feeling, that deep intuition, and then see a big whirlpool. That's the vritti. So that's causing the disturbed feeling. So that's the wacky feeling is the vritti along with the chitta. So chitta being feeling, or like kind of our whole consciousness, our whole conscious expression, and it gets into a vritti, and that's like our attachments and our desires and all the things that bring us outward.
Is most of that subconscious? The vrittis?
No, not necessarily. I mean, there's a lot in the subconscious. The subconscious is vast, but our whole, you know, just, you can just think of it as your consciousness. I mean, we have past life vrittis, we have present life vrittis. It's just all these things that get stuck around the chakras.
That's what Dharmadevi was sharing about Dronacharya, that he was the martial art teacher of the Pandavas, the forces of light, and the Kauravas, the forces of darkness. Dronacharya is habit. So you have good habits and you have bad habits. And so you cultivate, you get out of your bad habits by developing good habits, but then ultimately it's getting out of the thought that it's you doing any of it. That's where Yogananda talked in Samadhi, his poem, knowing, knower, known is one. The second Yoga Sutra, that's like all the spiritual literature we ever really need to read, because it's so deeply inspiring. Yoga is the calming of the chitta, brings us to Sat Chit. That's what Swamiji was saying at the end, brings us to the ever-existing, ever-conscious, ever-new bliss. So we don't actually have to do anything. We do, of course, have to put out effort, but our effort is of the kind of just peeling away the layers. It's taking away, it's that story of the guy who was looking for the paper, and he said, no, that's not it, and he was in the military, and this guy's crazy, and they sent him to the camp psychiatrist, and he went around his office, no, that's not it, and then finally they said medical discharge, and they gave him the paper, and said, oh, that's it, and he got out. And that's all it is. It's just, I have to relax, to open my heart. I don't actually, these things outside of me, my happiness isn't conditioned on anything outside me. That's why the yogis say the supreme virtue is contentment. Contentment isn't a passive thing. Contentment is an active, it's actually the experience of that joy on a deeper level. Avishai, do you have it?
Well, I imagine that, I just get this image, I think the image comes up, that when we're sending everything up, that it's kind of like this force is sort of pulling the edges of the vrittis, like pulling the energy up and out, and then every once in a while the body twitches or twists or releases something. And then as you just stay steady with it, even if I don't do it in one day, I can do it in little 20-minute chunks. I don't even have to do it in hours. And after a few days, it just, that one gone. Then what's the next one? And you just keep sending it up. But you see, this is what's a little confusing, is that to me that's one by one, but maybe that's a misunderstanding in the languaging, because you say you can't deal with everything one thing at a time, but yet there's this order that they're stacked up on each other, and as they go, it seems, I don't know, maybe at some point the force gets stronger and it starts to do more at a time. I'm not sure how to think of it.
One at a time, you would be at it for a really, really long time.
So there's probably more going on than I'm conscious of, but that's the part I can see.
Yeah, and that could be like a big one comes up that you're conscious of, and maybe a lot more is happening just through, your conscious drawing the energy upward.
I feel all this little micro stuff. I feel the subtle stuff, but I don't know. It's just feeling and stuff, and I can see. I get the sense that it's shifting, but I can only really feel like the big ones. So those are the ones I concentrate on, and that's the one where I say I'm tuning into the negative, and it's like, they hear me because I use my words in a way that I guess it sounds different to them than it sounds to me. But that's what I mean when I say tuning into the negative.
But that's what Arjuna says to Krishna. Right? Remember, he says, I can't. Krishna takes him out on the battlefield. He sees the Pandavas on one side and the Kauravas on the other. And he sees that he has to fight some of his friends, his cousins. And he says, I can't do it. And he has this moment of despair. And Krishna says, well, you're a warrior. It is your nature to fight. So those very shadow qualities and things, actually, this is the spiritual alchemy that happens, that they are our fodder for self-realization, that, you know, our anger, our, what does Yogananda say in Samadhi? Anger, greed, good, bad, salvation, lust, I swallowed, transmuted all into a vast ocean of blood of my own one being. And this is the washings and regenerations. This is the Brahmins in India are actually known as twice born, but really this is the science and art of Kriya Yoga, of deep meditation, of offering all that we are. And that's why the Gita is so beautiful, because it's all embracing of our nature. And so that we can use that not to focus on it and cultivate more negative tendencies, but in a sense of embracing it and offering it, accepting it and joyfully redirecting it.
This is primarily the process of meditation.
Yeah, well, meditation is, again, the second Yoga Sutra, Jim. It's really comes back to calming the chitta, and there are techniques, of course, that help us do it, to concentrate through the practice of Angsa, energization, communing with Divine Mother, and, you know, Kriya, which is really offering the life force in the spine and helping us to commune with God as divine joy. That's why Yogananda said that it's your spine and your brain that are the altar of God. We were just looking at, you know, the Pandava brothers. So but how do you locate the spine? How do you go inside? How do you actually have that experience? This is where it has to be, that first thing I was reading, I was sharing Swamiji, that it has to be an inner revelation. It has to be an inner experience. It has to be your experience. That's why we love yoga, because we grew up in the church. We've had enough dogma. Yeah, I love the church, so don't get me wrong, but we don't love the dogma.
Go ahead.
It's probably on.
No, go ahead.
That's okay.
What's the difference between the mind and the intellect?
Mind reflects, the intellect dissects. So your mind is like the mirror, just shows you the picture.
It takes it.
Yeah, it shows you, and then your intellect begins to associate names. Sherry, Dion, Colleen, Jim,
So
the
would the mind
camera.
be basically the senses?
Yeah, it's all the senses coming in through your mind, the impression you're taking of the outer world. Then you begin to dissect the information here. Then you begin to place attachment to it at the ego. That's what Swamiji was saying, at the point, the medulla. But the real attachment comes when we have that emotional, oh, I love my horse, I hate my horse, I hate that drink, I love whatever, all the different likes and dislikes. And Swamiji said to Yogananda, he said, we have to overcome every desire, even the desire for an ice cream cone. And Yogananda said, oh yes, even that. And he said, oh my God. He said, but you're thinking about it the wrong way. He said, when ecstasy comes, everything goes. So that's why you don't have to worry about Avishag, every little thing. It's that when we're in that flow of divine grace, when we're in the realm of karma, then we're caught in the Ferris wheel. It just goes around and around. It's the anguishing monotony, is the way Yogananda described it.
Can I add? Yeah.
Yes.
I just don't want to lose this thought. Do you remember when you were a teenager, or have you maybe been around a teenager like recently enough that you see how they get so wrapped up in what seems like such an insignificant thing, and it's like, oh my God, my world is ending. Susie doesn't like me anymore. And it's like, it's okay. I mean, maybe Susie will come around, maybe she won't, but there's other friends, and it's like, see a little bit bigger picture, but just think like we're teenagers still, just seeing each little test is like this huge deal. You know, when, like, imagine, visualize again that ocean that's just calm, but it's got this vritti going, right? And that vritti is like, our whole world is crashing down on us because whatever, fill in the blank. And then we just take a little bit of this magic potion of calmness or God's peace and just drop one little drop on it, or the ecstasy, and boom, that little vritti is just, I wasn't there, it's just the ocean, you know? And think about the vastness of the ocean, and it's like this one little vritti, you know? Or maybe it's a big vritti, but...
Samadhi, that poem, I love that poem. The storm of Maya stilled by magic wand of intuition deep. It's just like from that one, it's like the Matrix. It's just like, remember the story of the Gordian knot. You know, no one could untie the knot, and then Alexander the Great came with his sword and he cut the knot. You know, it's this super conscious cuts through all of the storms and the delusion of this world.
I was listening to your story, and I just heard the message of when you understand what this too shall pass means, it's like you can step back and just let the vritti wear itself out instead of feeding it. I don't know how oceans feed things. I don't know if that's a real thing and how that works, but how they disappear. But I mean, I think in understanding that, truly realizing and having your experiences of that, you naturally are able to accept the peace, to accept that it's, and then you serve the surrender more, and I guess that just develops.
I wanted to just jump back real quick about the subconscious, because like Narayan brought up Drona as being habit, representing habit, and him being the martial arts teacher for all the warriors. And what is a like devastating part of the Mahabharata is when Drona's son, Ashwatthama, who represents latent desires. So that you can think of that as the subconscious. The subconscious, or those latent tendencies, come in after the battle is seemingly won and kill off like 90% of the forces of light. And it's like, what? No! Are you kidding me? It's like they're just waiting there under the surface. But the Pandavas aren't touched by it. Our main heroes, and of course Krishna, they are like safe in the forest. But it's like just telling us, you know, don't, you know, like Yogananda said, we're not free until we're free. So if we start to get into like, hey, I'm doing pretty good here, like, things are seeming pretty easy, it's like, you know, we don't know what's just under the surface. So we just have to remain not in a state of fear, but in a state of diligence, of like conscious. No, I am not going to listen to that little voice that says, you've been meditating for so long, you probably don't need that anymore, you know, or just like whatever those little creepy voices that get in there that's just like, shut up. No, I do still have to work hard. And we have to work hard. Even Rajasi, Yogananda's most advanced disciple, had achieved Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the unbroken Samadhi bliss, constant union with God. And Yogananda looked at him one day and said, Rajasi, where does your power come from? And he said, I know, Master, it comes from you. So it's like just, you know, constantly remembering. And Sri Yukteswar, Gyanavatar, master for who knows how many lifetimes, totally free, liberated soul, said to Yogananda, if ever you find me going astray, take my head in your lap and bring me back to our omnipresent mother, or something like that. You know, it's like just staying in that humble place, and recognizing delusions.
We had our,
Um,
well, we're gonna
Yeah.
close at the chant and meditate together, but we had our Raja Yoga class last night on the anatomy of yoga, actually, I just realized that. And Swamiji, in there, one part he was talking about meditation related to it. And he was talking all about right attitude, and that it becomes increasingly important because yoga increases your awareness. It helps raise your energy level, so it becomes increasingly important that you practice right attitude. Yes, that's one of the pitfalls. You can have spiritual pride. Well, now I've got all these powers, but that's why we start with Sanatana Dharma, to remember our true goal is the ever-existing, ever-conscious, ever-new bliss. Doesn't matter if you have experiences, if you see lights, if you levitate, if you can move mountains, that God can still be elusive. And that's why it's important to hold those examples of the great ones that still have that humility.